All right, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Tanya Basha. I'm on the marketing team here at AnswerLab. I'll be moderating our webinar, Meeting UX Research Goals Remotely. This will be a discussion with several panelists. So for those of you who don't know, AnswerLab is a UX research consultancy. We are focused solely on conducting user experience research. So we've really embraced and built remote research methodologies from our early days. We've been around for about 15 years. We use them to help our clients solve all kinds of issues. So we feel really fortunate that we have so many tools and best practices at our disposal as we adapt to what is really an all remote environment right now. We hope we can share some practical tips and help all of you adjust during this time. We have three panelists today who will introduce themselves in a moment. Just like I'm sure most of you, we're all joining from home offices across the US. Everyone's working under slightly more challenging contexts. So if we have any unexpected technical glitches, just be assured we're going to send out a recording and we'll follow up with some content after this event. So if you lose us or we lose you, you'll still have all the tips. We took some questions in advance and we'll be covering those through the content today. We'd still love to hear from you. So if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a Q&A box there. Please enter any questions that you have as they come up and we'll take additional questions at the end. So last, we're planning on about 45 minutes of content here so we can get you all back to your day just to set some expectations. And now I'd like to pass over to our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bob Berry. I am a principal researcher here at AnswerLab. I work with a number of top companies in high tech, finance, consumer products. And we've been working, as Tanya mentioned, very heavily on helping all of them with their remote testing processes and helping all of their operations go online. I've been with AnswerLab about 3 years, but prior to that, I've been doing user research, customer experience research, market research in general with a variety of high-tech companies for the last 25 years or so. Appreciate everyone being here. Looking forward to sharing with you some of the practices that we've come upon and hope that they can be useful for you as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Zabel. I am a senior researcher and team lead at AnswerLab. I've spent pretty much all my career in human-centered design, either in strategy, product, research or design, making sure that customers or people and businesses can find value in digital experiences. And I've been at AnswerLab for almost 2 years now and really have a strong belief in our mission of creating digital experiences that people love. I'm going to talk to you today about some of my current work at AnswerLab, specifically sharing experiences on moving studies from in-person to remote, but then also some common themes about engaging and working with stakeholders during this time and beyond. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Molly Kessler. I'm also a senior UXR and team lead at AnswerLab. I'm approaching about 2 years at AnswerLab as well, working primarily in tech and financial services. Before that, I did research across all kinds of industries, healthcare, sporting goods, financial services on the client side. I am a full-time remote AnswerLab employee. I'm based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I also have a small son, an 8-month-old baby. So over the last 2 years at AnswerLab, my research has been primarily remote. I've done almost all remote. And so for me, the shift was a little less intense, and I felt like that really gave me some time to help my clients and colleagues with this big adjustment that we're all facing moving to remote research. And I'm excited to talk about it today with all of you.
Great, thanks everybody. So what are we going to cover today? As I mentioned earlier, we took a lot of questions from all of you as you were registering, and it really bubbled up into 3 main themes here. So we're going to cover conducting remote UX research, more on the logistics and technical side, taking a human-centered approach with participants and navigating stakeholder relationships. And then we'll have some more time at the end for an open Q&A. So we've organized this where each of our panelists is going to take point on a subject area. So we're going to start on just talking about everyone who needs customer feedback right now is facing some similar challenges. So many of you sent in questions around how to actually effectively conduct remote research. Bob, you've been creating a number of custom remote solutions for our clients to help them transition from in-person to remote right now. So we thought we'd start with you, talking a little bit about how teams can do this effectively. But if we could start off, what's your perspective just on what's happening right now?
Well, to set the context here for remote and why it's so important, as we know, with everything going on in the world right now, and it's moving very quickly, online and virtual business operations and functions have become far more important than ever before. And that includes all types of devices, whether that's mobile or desktop. So businesses, organizations that want to interact with people in the world, want to interact with their customers, prospects, users, they're going to have to rely on online and virtual a lot more because that's where the people that they want to reach are going to be found, and that's where they're going to have to conduct business or manage their operations. And of course, in that process, we need to make sure that all of those online, those new expanded experiences are going to work well for everyone, that they're going to provide users what they need, and they're going to help businesses reach their goals. And so in order to do that, all of that, of course, we're going to have to do all of it while we're still social distancing, while we're all still working remote, and we're all trying to flatten the curves. And we don't really know when that's going to end. That's an ongoing process. So learning how to do all of this and helping businesses make this transition as we continue to work remote is really what we're talking about here today.
Well, we know that's definitely top of mind because we got a lot of questions about tools and processes and just what do we use, what works best. So let's jump into some of those. We had a lot of questions about what is the best tool for remote research, or what are the best tools? Can you speak a little to that question?
So that's really an it depends. So it's really important in the process of looking at whatever tools that you're going to use that you consider what are your overall objectives. What are you trying to test? Whoever your clients or constituents are, to really understand what kind of outcomes you're looking for. So we use a variety of tools and methods to conduct remote research. So for example, we use various teleconferencing platforms like we're using Zoom right now. And that may vary depending on the client needs, and may depend on what kind of things we're testing. We also use a variety of collaboration tools like Google Docs or Miro, or some clients have their own preferences on how they want to communicate, how they want to manage information, comment on results, track sessions. Of course, this requires the devices themselves to be accessible. If we're working with a live app or a production website, that's pretty easy to access through whatever devices. We also need to be able to provide some kind of recording capability in many cases, so we can capture what's going on. And sometimes it's necessary to provide additional capabilities if clients or groups want to do additional brainstorming workshops, and there's a variety of tools that we use for that as well. So in most cases, though, we try to keep it simple. There's a lot of tools available out there, but we try not to over-engineer this. We try to focus on what is the most essential for getting the job done, for communicating and collaborating with whatever participants are involved, and making sure that we have some key findings and artifacts to take away when the sessions are done.
Great. Well, moving from the technical tools, what are some issues that you've run into, or maybe some things to keep an eye out for to maybe mitigate potential problems?
Yeah, this is a lot more challenging now, Tanya, because we don't have as much control over what's happening on the other end that we used to have when we were doing this face-to-face, or when we were doing it in a lab setting. So some of the challenges that we face, and some of the ways that we've dealt with this, is technical savvy of the participants can sometimes be a challenge. We want to make sure that the participants and users that we're working with can use the technology that we're having them test. We want to make sure that they can have the knowledge and the confidence to go through whatever tasks or tests we're assigning them. So most of that we manage during the recruiting and the initial phase of designing and setting up the project. And that might include actually having people test out, try out various aspects of the systems that they're working with, and maybe install apps or download plugins, or, during the recruiting phase, we can walk participants through a lot of those setup steps. And then during the, on the day of the sessions, we sometimes do what we call walk-ins, which is having recruiters actually, participate with participants as they get into the Zoom session or whatever platform we're using, to make sure that they're plugged in and they know what they're doing. The device setup itself can be challenging as well. So this is where it's really important, with all the technology, the device we're testing, the applications or prototypes we might be using, whatever collaboration platforms we might be using. There's a certain number of technical moving parts. So doing some kind of practice, again, keeping it simple, don't over-engineer it. And then whatever we use, we'd like to try and set up pilots and practice sessions ahead of time. And that might include even having mock participants involved, so we can walk through every aspect of what we're doing to make sure. Bandwidth can be an issue as well, especially with everybody going online, everybody using Zoom and other platforms. We want to make sure, and there are various ways to minimize bandwidth requirements, turn off video when you're using things. Sometimes we've had to have people dial in by phone while they're sharing their screens in Zoom or some other platform, to minimize the bandwidth on that platform. And of course, now everyone is working at home in their kitchen or their living room, and so there's naturally going to be distractions. There's going to be pets and kids and parents and, and somebody at the door and whatever. And we just have to be flexible. We have to be willing to roll with the punches and make sure that we can be adaptable and, realize that some of those distractions are going to come along, and we need to make sure that we can flow with them as they do.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about looking at things on screens with people. We got a couple questions about the hardware software components, and I reinterpreted this more as, what if you need to understand a physical interaction as well? What are some tips or some ways that you've approached that?
Yeah, that's another one that can be challenging, because again, we don't have as much control over what's happening on the other end, but there's a number of best practices and tips and tricks. So a lot of the things I just mentioned are going to be important, being able to recruit the right people, make sure that they're set up ahead of time. In some cases, it might include understanding participants' individual hardware, software setups that they have, and working with what they have. Go where they are rather than trying to bring them to where we are. So knowing what devices they have, what kind of software they might have installed, what kind of bandwidth they might have available. And again, testing, piloting, doing test runs to make sure. Also, as we go through this, it's kind of a learning process. So as we're working with the various combinations of hardware, software, platforms, client requirements, prototypes, we're constantly documenting and training and building our knowledge base. So everyone's going to have their own specific requirements. So we really encourage everybody to engage in that learning process, capture what you're doing, really understand what some of the complications are, make sure that all your teams are equipped, make sure they have the resources. Again, be flexible. In some cases, specific combinations of hardware and software are just going to require us to be more flexible and kind of play a MacGyver role, be willing to adapt real time and respond to what happens in the moment with all those devices. For example, one example that we've had to deal with recently is we wanted to have interactions with a specific hardware device, have participants test something. Obviously, we can't walk up to somebody, hand that to them, and sit down with them and have them interact with it. So we created a whole series of images, videos, different angles on the hardware device, lots of descriptions, scenarios of what the device would do. And we were able to simulate a lot of what that physical device would do and what it would look like and feel like for the participant. And we actually got quite a few good responses and a lot of good insights around that when we went through that process. So be creative and be willing to try things like that can be, some reasonable facsimile of what you normally would do in person.
Thanks. I do want to get us into some participant questions. So let's see if you can give us a bit of a recap here, some guidance on how to approach remote.
Yeah, so I've mentioned some of these. So be sure that, again, keep your objectives in mind. What are the research questions? What are you really trying to get at? And make sure that you don't get distracted from those. Keep those objectives. Collaborate with your teams. Collaborate with your partners, your clients, whoever you're working with. They might often have creative ideas, and we're all having to learn a lot of new things here. So the more you can work with, everybody that's involved, the more ideas you're going to have, the more ways you're going to have to flex. As I mentioned, keep it simple. Do a minimum, and that might even just, the metaphor I like to use, learn to walk first and then learn how to run. So if you're starting out on this, start with some simple things, figure out how to get those in place. And again, you can't believe how important it is to set up and practice and pilot ahead of time. You don't want to go into sessions cold and run into unanticipated technical problems. Try and get those figured out ahead of time and solve those. And again, in the moment, just be flexible, keep your cool, be willing to adapt to whatever comes along. And we've found most of these are going, actually we've been surprised at how well all of these sessions are going and how much people are willing to flex. And everybody knows the world's changed, and everybody's been very willing to work with us and try new things. So it's actually going quite well.
Yeah, everybody's dealing with a lot of change right now. That makes sense. All right. So getting away from the technical piece, the people piece of this, our participants, beyond making the successful transition for your technologies and your logistics, how do we recruit participants, build rapport, and gather valid insights right now? Molly, I'm going to pass it over to you to give us some insight here.
Yeah, thanks. So I think when you find out you have to move your research remote, the first thing you think about is the sort of logistical aspects that Bob spoke to, right? Like, what tools am I going to use? How am I going to do it? And then but the reality is that this situation with COVID-19 is not just affecting our methods, right? It's affecting everything about every piece of the research study that we're doing. And that includes affecting our participants, it's affecting our actual sessions as they happen, and it's also affecting our findings. So I think for me, as a researcher, when I'm talking to clients, I'm always stressing that human-centered, human-centric design, human-centric experiences, empathy, right? It's what you want your clients to think about. And now, I think more than ever, for me, it's the time for us to, yes, it's important to be neutral, it's important to be objective, but it's the time to practice what we preach, right? And have empathy and sort of take off your objective hat for a minute and just truly find out how your participants are doing before you talk to them, just so that you can make them comfortable and have more successful research.
Great. Yeah, we got a lot of questions along those lines. Questions about just moderation scripts and how you're using them, whether you're using them, just how you're approaching that.
Yeah, so I do always use the discussion guide, and in this scenario, now that we've moved all of our research remote and just the world that we're living in now with COVID-19, I have modified quite a bit. And so I think the most important modification you can make is in your session intro, when you're sort of setting the stage for the session, just acknowledge with the participant what's happening. I just wrote out some language, just acknowledging like, hey, these are extraordinary times. You're going through it, I'm going through it. Thanks for your time. And sort of just leveling the playing field between you and the participant when you start to talk to them. And you can, write some language about COVID-19, but it's also important to acknowledge that the session is remote, right? Like maybe it was supposed to be a focus group in person and now you're all, in your webcams on Zoom, and it's a little bit unusual, and it's okay to just acknowledge that. But in addition to that, the language that I wrote, I think it's really important to ask the participant how they're doing and how they're feeling, right? Like that's the time to find out that if they're okay. And there are so many advantages to that. One is definitely building rapport and making the participant feel comfortable, but it's also going to be an advantage for you. I know I breathe a sigh of relief when I know my participant is doing okay right now before I launch into, 55 more minutes of questions and testing. Taking that 5 to make sure they're okay makes me feel better. And it's also better for your client. I mean, if a participant is too stressed out right now, or there's too many distractions and they're maybe not a good fit for research right now, I think we need to allow ourselves to use more alternates, use more backups, but it'll give your client that peace of mind that the participant is in the right mindset to talk to you for an hour or however long your session is.
Okay. We had a number of people say things too, like, is this an improvement in some cases, or the types of research that are actually better done with remote participants? Is that something that you've run into? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so definitely in some cases, I think the sort of natural environment that the participant is in and just their comfort level in their home is going to make for a better session than maybe a facility that could be more intimidating or that they may not have access to. it's going to depend on your topic, and it's going to depend on your participant. The most important thing is just to keep the context in mind. And I was talking about how I write a little blurb for my discussion guide, but I've also been, having blurbs prepared for if you need to dismiss a participant. Just have some language ready for that. It can really help you feel confident going into a remote session. And then language for a report is really important. Maybe some sessions might be improved and some findings might be improved by the scenario that we're in now, but it's just, you have to acknowledge it. So, I know for every report I've delivered since we went remote, I have included some language about, participants right now are being affected by COVID-19. Their behaviors are changing. They're under restrictions that they weren't under before. It's really important if a client looks back at your report in 6 months to have that context and make sure they know what kind of snapshot in time you're capturing with this research. And then I think with recruiting, we've also seen some positives, some improvements, but also some challenges. So some of the challenges I know we've faced in these times, like for example, Answer Lab is no longer recruiting healthcare workers. Healthcare workers' time is so precious and valuable right now. And there are also some other populations that we're just being really, really mindful about recruiting. An example, I think a good example is small business owners. A lot of them are under really a lot of stress right now. And so looking at your population and thinking like, is it appropriate to recruit them is a challenge. On the other hand, unemployment and uncertainty are really high right now. And I think there are a lot of folks out there with free time and who might, value some supplemental income. So thinking about that in terms of recruiting, it can actually be an opportunity to let people get a distraction for, a little bit of time while they participate in your research, to give them some supplemental cash. And then also, of course, they're still, at the end of the day, they're helping brands improve their products. So, it can be a little bit of a win-win on recruiting for certain populations if you're just mindful.
Okay. I wanted to go back to something that Bob actually brought up, thinking about technical savvy. Do you have some thoughts about steps to increase recruitment when you're trying to reach people who maybe don't have the same technical or internet access that that some of our maybe coastal participants do?
Yeah, it's a really that's a really big challenge. Like I think Bob said, go where they are, and I think that this is another scenario that calls for that, right? So instead of looking at your tech setup and saying these participants don't fit my study, I think you have to look at the participants that you need, look at their recruit, and say, how can I make my study fit them? So I think the best way to do that is figure out what tools they're already using, and then say, can I get my data using those tools? So I think some examples we've seen at Answer Lab are a move towards diary studies, right? If they don't maybe have the internet access for a session, a one-on-one interview, could you get your data using a diary study so they can do things on their own time? I think the tools that we've used, we've had to get creative. I know a couple of researchers who have used direct messages, social media direct messages, to try to get feedback and run almost a diary study that way if they know their participants are using those social media tools. I know we had a researcher who did some interviews using WhatsApp recently. It's a great option for international interviews. I think the bottom line is, if your participants are going to struggle with the tech setup that Bob was talking about, the requirements of the tech setup, can you look at what they're already using, what they're already tech savvy with, and take your research there so that you can, as Bob said, meet them where they are.
Okay. Well, if folks have additional questions there, go ahead and drop them into the Q&A. And Molly, do you want to give us some key takeaways here?
Yeah. So my key takeaways are just to acknowledge the situation, do it in the intro, lay it all out there, so that you and your participants are on the same page. Ask them how they're doing and feeling. Acknowledging it is like step one, but I think just saying, how are you in these times and how do you feel? Let them get that off their chest. And as I mentioned, make sure that you and them are in the right mindset to do some research at that point in time. Preparing language for potential scenarios, maybe having to dismiss participants because things are just really unusual right now, or putting that language into your report to make sure that the situation or findings that are impacted by this scenario are accounted for. I recently was I was doing some research on a new app idea, and one of the goals was to collect some use case ideas. And the use cases that are top of mind for people right now are really impacted by COVID-19. I heard things like, well, I'm home and I'm bored out of my mind and I have tons of free time, so this app would be great. So that's a great finding, but it has to be, you have to have that language ready to make sure that the context is included in your findings and in your report. Just remembering that there are a lot of recruiting challenges right now. You need to be mindful, but there are also opportunities. There are I was doing research with teenagers like last week, and teenagers are home and they're available during the day. Their parents are there. It was actually a great time to talk to teens. And that's usually more of a challenging recruit. So thinking about those opportunities and seeing if you can capitalize on those. And then finally, using the tools your participants are using to try to mitigate tech issues that are going to come up when you're all working remote.
Great, thank you. So our last topic area here is really around stakeholder relationships. So why is research important right now? How do you explain the value, or how do you champion the value? How do you maintain stakeholder engagement? And then how are you sharing your results in this new remote environment? Kristen's here to talk about these three themes.
Thanks, Tanya. It's great to be here. When I looked at the questions prior to the webinar, I definitely saw kind of a couple themes come through. One is making sure that the value of research is still there, or still understood. Making sure that we can engage stakeholders during the research, and then also making sure that we have impactful insights to communicate from the research. So kind of in some thoughts on value is, I actually went and did my own research on this and dove a little deep into understand how do companies weather recessions. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that they take a two-prong approach. One is there's definitely the cost-cutting measures, which we hear about in the news around job loss, lack of, or holding back spending. But then there's the other prong, which is investing in R&D, research and development. And that is our skill set, is research and development. So I think it's this wonderful time to really uncover and take the time with our users, with our customers, with our audience, whatever we call kind of our main stakeholder and who we're in service of, to really understand what they need, what their problems are, how we can help them, how we can be of service, and sharing those learnings out, doing the research, because that fuels innovation. And those are critical tasks that we can do at this time as researchers to keep the business healthy in the long term. I kind of think about the last recession, which started in 2008, but the signals were there, a couple years before. And I remember that the iPhone launched around that time, a luxury product completely new to the world. And I think it launched in 2007. And I think about what would have happened if Apple had stopped investing in innovation, in research and development, when the recession hit in 2008. If Steve Jobs had just said, okay, well, we got to cut back our spending and lay people off, and that's it. And that's not what happened. They continued to invest in research. So there's absolutely a lot of value. To wrap up that facet, I think about something I saw on Instagram from a freelancer, Peter McBride. He's a journalist and photographer. And he said, it's a shaky time for all freelancers and journalists and photographers and artists right now. But uncertainty has always been a part of the package. And he's used that time in the past to really think about new projects, new questions, new initiatives that he wants to take on. And I think all of us can benefit from that advice as improving the value of research at this time. So then in thinking about engaging stakeholders in research, and I think this is a challenge anytime, can be with busy schedules, and differing priorities and things clamoring for our stakeholders' attention. So in thinking about how to engage them, I think the most important thing is to communicate that as researchers, we got this. I am a huge proponent of transparency and over communicating, not only letting them know that you have thought through moving all the research projects on the roadmap and how you're going to manage them now remotely, and which ones are great candidates and should be prioritized and which ones should maybe move to the lower on the list, I think is an excellent way to show foresight and thoughtfulness to stakeholders in order to build that trust and confidence with them that, don't worry, research is, we're gonna get through this together. Research is gonna be okay. You're gonna get your data to make the decisions you need to move forward. And also being flexible with reprioritization as we go into a much different business environment. I think too, while the sessions are happening, to engage the stakeholders in the research and with each other. I have a pretty simple technique that I've honed over time and had some clients actually help me with this, is the idea of having the stakeholders participate remotely in what they're hearing, what they're seeing the participants do, what they're hearing, all this explicit data. We as researchers can engage them with remote tools like Mural, Miro, kind of the more workshopping that mimic the Post-it environment, or having just a simple 2-column Google Sheets. Stakeholders can see what their team members, other stakeholders are putting in, and learn from that, and learn, okay, from this point of view, like engineering's point of view, this is what they're hearing. And from design and products point of view, this is what they're hearing. And what that allows is then another column or another section that stakeholders can say, okay, I heard this, I saw this, this makes me think. And then starting to think about their opinion on what they heard and the impact and how they can apply their expertise to the problems they're hearing, the opportunities they're seeing, or how to further what's working really well. So I'd recommend that for engaging stakeholders. And then finally, in the last piece, making sure that we are able to share those insights in an impactful way. And I think of a couple of ways to do that. I think since we're all remote now, the main priority is making sure that you are delivering insights in a way that your stakeholders need, really understanding their audience and specifically what they're going to do with the insights. So for example, if the research work is primarily evaluative and for validating designs, talking to designers and the engineers and saying, okay, how do you normally take feedback? How do you normally get information and adjust your designs or engineering of the product to make it better? And data from user insights are the same way. So for example, we've heard some of our clients have actually delivered insights in Jira tickets for the engineering team, because that's how the engineering team reviews and understands information and can adjust accordingly. So I think that this time kind of gives us an opportunity to innovate on different ways to deliver insights. And I'll also say that what's really important is we are on Slack and chat to use those platforms as a way to share information. So for example, thinking of what sort of delivery format of the research content can go in these very easily. What can you drop and share into a chat for discussion very easily? So thinking like infographics, meme formats, not necessarily memes like making fun of anyone, certainly, but as a way to convey the information you heard, highlighting one story of one participant that illuminates the themes of the data and the research, and looking at video and video highlight reels as a way to also share insights. So those are a couple of thoughts on navigating stakeholder relationships.
Thanks, Kristen. Do you want to give us some wrap-up takeaways here?
Yeah, you bet. So with stakeholder engagement, it's really important to give them that confidence and transparency. So keeping the lines of communication open and over communicating. I think on the day of research, making sure that the team is updated throughout the day is really important. Something as simple as, hey, that participant went well. Here's, they were very engaging, and I think we got a lot of great data. Or that participant was challenging. However, I still think we got these pieces of information. I think one of the things that will keep them absolutely engaged is using our digital remote tools like Miro, mural, Google Sheets to create that collaboration space so stakeholders can not only hear the research and reflect on it, but can also engage with other stakeholders. And then something that we always do or typically do, I won't say always, typically do at AnswerLab is making sure that we end our research days thoughtfully. And I think that all researchers can do this and have a recap, have a debrief, get that on the calendar ahead of time to make sure that everyone who participated can align on what we heard, even if people just attended 1 or 2 sessions. And then as far as impactful insights, it's very important to understand the audience and specifically how they will use. What decisions are they making? What changes are they looking to make? What paths do they want to go down using these insights? And then making sure that the insights delivered help them make those decisions. I also think a quick summary in a way that provides answers to research questions is really helpful, because our research questions are the foundation of a research study. So making sure that those dots are connected by providing succinct answers at the end of the sessions. I also think it's helpful to think, especially if you're testing something like product design or researching different product areas, is thinking like a product manager. And what they care about is their roadmap, feature priority, scope, impact, how this will change the metrics, how this will deliver on their OKRs and KPIs, how this fits into the grand product vision. So if you can tailor your insights in service of that and how the product manager can make decisions about their product and roadmap, it will be very impactful. And then finally, taking advantage of those our remote chat tools and thinking about, okay, what can be quickly posted, what can be easily read, what can be easily shared, and formatting your results in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got some time now to take additional questions that came in. I'm going to start with one that I think any of you can answer. You probably all have an example. As we talked about, recently transitioned a number of our client projects to remote. What methodological changes or compromises did you all run into, or may you have run into on a project?
I can speak to this. I think for me, it's in-person mobile usability testing, right? Like when you're sitting next to someone and you're watching them use a mobile phone, as well as seeing their screen, as well as seeing their face. And so recently, I've had to sort of tackle that with a combination of tools. So using something like Zoom so that you can capture their face and their screen. I've had to make some adjustments where instead of actually using a mobile device, we're displaying a prototype, a mobile simulation on desktop so that I can have the participant interact with it and click around with it. And then sometimes we've had to go unmoderated to see usability, right? To see like where people are tapping and what people are doing. So I would say that was a compromise in that we had to use multiple methods to tackle something that in person is so simple, right? You just watch them use the mobile device. And instead we had to get creative and sort of come at it from a couple different angles.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit to that too. So one of my favorite ways of doing research is actually going out in the wild and doing, whether it's ethnographies or in-home interviews, or really seeing people in their natural environment, whether it's home or workplace or somewhere else. Obviously, we've had to give that up, and so I think that's one of the big trade-offs. Is that there are just certain contexts for research that again, that whole in the wild approach and process is something that for now we're going to have to find ways to try to interview people and extract them from them their experiences, their stories, and try to replicate that as much as we can without actually being in those physical environments. So that's a big trade-off. That's too bad that we can't do that, but I still think there's a lot of ways that we can learn about those things and still hear those stories and those narratives from the people that used to experience them and aren't able to do that at the moment.
Right. Had a question. Molly, would you be willing to share some of your dismissal language when you have to let a participant go? And I'm sure this comes up for everyone, so if anyone else wants to jump in too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually saw another question also asking about the participants' mood after you ask them about COVID-19 affecting their findings, which I think is a really good point, but I still think the pros outweigh the cons in building rapport. And I do think if you have a participant that you think their mood is really affecting what they're telling you, and it's just not the kind of data you're looking for, and they're not responding to tactics like think back to a time, and trying to get them away from that, then you do need to dismiss them. And so the way that I usually do it is I say something like, it seems like you are, and then just be honest with them. It seems like you are stressed out. It seems like you are distracted. It seems like you are busy. And then let them know that that's okay. That is not a problem. It's not their fault. And then just be really clear that you're ending the session. Don't leave it up to them, because most people are just really nice and they'll say, no, 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 I'm fine, I can do it. Say, I am going to end our session because of that, as long as they know it's not their fault. And then I don't know how feasible this is for everyone, but at Answer Lab, if we dismiss someone, we typically still compensate them. So just thanking them for the time they did give you. And then in my case, I let them know, like, you'll still be compensated. This is not your fault. It's extraordinary time. I'm going to end the session, but thank you for what you've given. And I hope you, take care and be well. So, being empathetic, and you do have to balance it with being firm. If you don't think that it's the right time to talk to that person, just tell them that this isn't the right time for a research session between the two of us.
Thank you. We also had a question about concerns about how do you, if you can't feel the feelings of the people that you're talking to. So what is the difference between having that sense of empathy for people when you're in person versus remote? I'm wondering if anyone wants to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I saw that question. I thought it was, really, really interesting. And I reflected on it. And what's fascinating about this time is that we might have to work a little harder to listen. Like, I feel like one of my skills as a researcher is listening, and it's so much easier to do in person because I'm listening to everything about them. I'm listening to the tone of their voice. I'm seeing their face, their body language, which is the majority of communication, and I can feel what they're feeling a lot easier. I found with remote research that that's still there. It just takes me a little more effort to do. So video is absolutely important for this, I feel like, in order to see the face. But if it's not possible to do it over video, and you're interviewing, the method requires more phone calls and you can't see their face, that pause, that really taking the time to hear, reflect, understand what they're saying, and then the feelings come through. So we're having to rely on a lot more information over a small surface in order to feel the feelings. But I absolutely feel that if we, at least when I've been taking the time to really be attentive to their feelings and allowing the time, and maybe that means we don't cover as many topics in order to allow for that, but I'm still able to gain that empathy. And then I believe we should also communicate that empathy. So having a way to tell their story in our insights and in the reports we share, either through video or a voice recording, or some sort of write-up of a person's experience that illustrates the themes, I believe we can still effectively feel and communicate that empathy.
Thank you, Kristen. I think that covers most of the questions that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please, if you found this useful, go ahead and connect with us in your social media platform of choice. And if you're looking for more remote resources, we will be posting some additional topics actually this week and in the coming weeks. This is just top of mind. We're all working through it. So we're creating more best practices and tips. And again, thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.